Hello and welcome to Tar Heel Teachers at Home. I'm Marlow Artist. I'm the moderator of the program. Tar Heel Teachers at Home is an interview series focused on engaging North Carolinians in conversations around education. Each week, I'm happily joined by a wonderful panel of educators, each one representing a particular subsection of education. We'll start our introductions with our elementary school co-host.
Hi, my name is Amy Tart, and I teach fourth grade ELA and social studies for Clinton City Schools. I'm in my 8th year of teaching, and you can follow me on Twitter at Cards for Scholars.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joy Williams. I am principal at Luther Nick Gerald's Middle School in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I am presently the Cumberland County Schools Principal of the Year. I've been in education for 23 years.
Congratulations and thank you so much for joining us as a special guest co-host.
My name is Jason Edwards. I'm an English teacher at Overhills High School. This is my 18th year in education in North Carolina. I had a number of years at Huntington before that, and I look forward to all of this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us as special guest co-host, Jason. We appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Arisha Smalls, and I'm the Elementary AIG Program Specialist for Cumberland County Schools, and you can follow me on Twitter at SmallsArisha.
Awesome. For this episode of Tar Heel Teachers at Home, we're being joined by Dr. Bev Emory, who is retiring from education in December after 41 years of service, including 2 superintendencies here in North Carolina. She was also a superintendent in Ohio. She currently serves as the executive director of Leandro Support for the North Carolina State Board of Education and the Department of Public Instruction. She is here to reflect on her exceptional career, and we are so honored. Dr. Emory, welcome back to Tar Heel Teachers at Home.
Thank you, Marlow. I'm happy to be here with all of you.
Really excited to chat with you and very honored to chat with you. So, Dr. Emory, you made this decision a few months ago, but the news was recently shared with everybody across the state. So how does it feel now that the announcement has been made that you are indeed retiring from education?
Well, I have to admit, it's a real mix, right? I'm excited to sort of do my own thing after all these years. I've been working since I was 16, and so I'm looking forward to a little bit of creative time, downtime. It's also a little scary, when you've always done what you've always done. That little bit of fear out there about not anybody else, just me, like, can I manage this, and what am I going to do with myself? And so I am I'm looking forward to it, and I think this is just another learning curve, right? You don't want to stop learning, so how do I do this gracefully and in a timely manner? You never want to be that person who hangs around too long. Everybody's going, when's she going to retire? So
That is great. I'm glad to hear you talk about doing it gracefully. So, I mean, your whole career, you've done it gracefully and really have contributed so much to education. You're so well respected. Even with the announcement, everybody had so many positive things to say. I read countless positive things about you. So, Dr. Emory, let's go back a little bit in time to your position as a math and science teacher at West McDowell Junior High School. What really brought you to education, and what do you remember most about your time that time in your career?
that's such a great question. I started out thinking I was going to be a physical therapist. So I took all these science courses, and then I did not get accepted at Chapel Hill or Duke into physical therapy school. And after all those courses, I really decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to get my education courses. I'm going to be a science teacher. And I grew up in McDowell County. It was the first job I was offered. And I have to tell y'all, back in those days, you could still paddle, and smoking. There was smoking on campus. It was not the middle school, but the high school. So it was a really different time. And I have profound memories of students, like always, right? It was the students who taught me more than I believe I taught any of them. I will tell you this, one of my most profound memories of those days was basically a young boy who kept getting in trouble and kept getting in trouble. And I finally just said, Charlie, we're going to go to the office and I'm going to call your dad. And his response to me was, good luck, lady. My dad's in jail. And in that moment, for me, it was like, you just need to deal with these kids in front of you and figure out how to build that bridge with them, because putting it off on somebody else, is never really going to work. And that doesn't mean you don't reach out to parents, but those years in the classroom, I truly believe kids taught me way more than I ever taught them.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. And how did you make that leap into administration and get on the track to being a superintendent? Because you ended up serving as a superintendent for 25 years. So how did that path even start?
Well, I don't think most people say I want to be a superintendent when I grow up. For me, it was really once I got into education, wanting to be a principal. And I still believe it's the best, most profound job in the profession. And so, I had the opportunity to go to a central office as a public relations communications person in McDowell County. And, in those days, there was very little summer school. So I helped with summer programming, and from there went to the principalship. I really did, sort of stepped into the superintendency. I was a female in the early 90s, and people asked me to go interview, and it was mostly, I think, unfortunately, a female at that time was viewed as a diverse candidate. Most superintendents were white males. And so I just, I got to go places that people paid for to be in an interview lineup. I never really dreamed I would ever get offered a job. And of course, that first job was in Ohio. I was 34 years old. I had no clue what I was doing. So again, a huge learning curve for me. But, I didn't set out like, plot this plan to become a superintendent.
Mm-hmm. Just about being committed to serving and looking for opportunities to serving in 2 superintendencies in Ohio, then serving as superintendent for Pitt County Schools, and then Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools before moving to DPI. So you've done so many great things in your state, and we're so grateful that you did not get into the physical therapy program at Carolina or Duke.
Maybe that's a retirement job, right?
What questions do we have for Dr. Emory? Go ahead, Principal Williams.
I wanted to ask Dr. Emory, she's had a wealth of experience and time spent in, a host of school systems. What would you say is the most impactful change that you brought about in your experience as an educator?
Wow, that's a tremendous question. There are several points of pride. I would tell you that one of the things I learned early on, and I hope this doesn't sound too blasé, but in going to districts, one of the things I began doing was focus groups. And you do that as a new superintendent, we call it a listening tour or whatever. But in my last 2 districts, after doing it the first round, people said, you should do this every year. And so not on the broad scale like we did on that first year when you're sort of transitioning to a new district, but always trying to figure out how do you listen, whether it's focus groups. And, those grew and became different. In one district, teachers said, we don't want to be blended in with community members. We want our own focus group so we can tell you what we need to tell you. But a whole lot of improvement, planning, programming literally came out of people telling, simple 3 questions. What are we doing well? What do we need to improve on? You have me sitting here for an hour. What is it you want your superintendent to know about what's going on in the district? And I just think that intentional asking and listening does lead to improvements. And if you create forums for people to talk to you, they will. So it also helps you build trust, right, with all your stakeholders by listening.
Dr. Emory, I would love to hear about some of the leaders that you've had throughout your career and how did their leadership impact the type of leader that you are now?
That's great. I would tell you that there are guys in the state that you all probably recognize their name who encouraged me way, way back. And I'm going to give you two of those names just because I feel like they have influenced me in big ways. One, Bill Harrison, the other, Terry Greer. And Terry Greer literally hired me out of the classroom in McDowell County into that communications role. And both of these folks have encouraged me for, almost 40 years of my career. I went to the same doctoral program they did. You can do this, right? It's too expensive. Well, here's how you apply for, tuition scholarship. And then, those people along the way who say, yes, you can. Sharon Crawford has been retired for a while. She also was one of the only female superintendents when I was very young and sort of coming up, and sort of lived in front of me what was possible. And so those folks who modeled, I would say, students first, always, the other person who has been around North Carolina who I have always respected and admired was Dudley Flood. And, what I would say about all of these people is you're going to face challenges. Things aren't going to always go your way. There's going to be crisis. But if you always keep students as your North Star, you're going to be okay. And even if you're not okay, you can sleep at night, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's at the end of the day what this is about.
One question I had is, you have had a variety of different positions throughout your career, okay, and almost run the gamut of everything that you could possibly do in education, okay. With your experience, how has teaching changed from when you first got in to now?
Wow, who would ever think a pandemic on top of that? Pre-pandemic, what I would tell you that is sort of heartbreaking to me, and I know this is a fun show, so forgive me for being a little too serious, but when I started teaching in 1980, I believed in my heart that things would get better for kids, right? You have to believe over time that the plight of children is going to get better and that we contribute to that. That's why we're doing it. What's a little frightening to me exiting after 41 years is I'm not so sure I can tell you that that is absolutely the case right now, that things are better. And for teachers, I don't mean this to sound negative. In fact, they are the biggest heroes in my opinion, but I cannot imagine that there's ever in my 41 years been a harder time to be a teacher. There's just so much going on right now, and the expectations are so great that we all need to stay focused on how do we improve that environment for the folks who are closest to our babies, because they're needier now than I think they've ever been. So I don't say that without hope, but I say it is more challenging now. Let me also say, I believe the sophistication of the teacher today is so incredibly advanced in terms of what teachers do and all the different tools they use. And when I was in the classroom, you got kudos for doing hands-on experiments or using math manipulatives. The fact that people are bringing learning from all over the globe into a classroom and doing it, in my mind, remarkably in terms of engagement strategy. So I think the actual pedagogy is far advanced and superior. The challenges of being able to be an educator, I think, are greater than they've ever been.
So I was going to ask, I saw that this year you were awarded the Champion for Children's Award, which congratulations. So I was going to ask, what do you think it means to be a champion for children, and how do you think that how did you respond to receiving such a great award?
Well, thank you for that. I'm grateful to be recognized with that award, and I'm going to tell you why. I left the superintendency in 2019, and I was only at DPI for almost 9 months before the pandemic. And I know Marlow's heard me say this. I had survivor's guilt. I mean, I seriously felt guilty that all these people across the state in the trenches are dealing with this, and I'm at DPI. So the fact that David and I were in a position to lead during the pandemic and to help DHHS and the governor's office and others really interpret what all this guidance, what does that literally look like on a school bus, or no, you can't do 6 feet apart. I mean, our job was really almost like interpreting for other state agencies during that time. At least I felt like I was doing something to support my colleagues in the field. I do want to say something about that Champion for Children. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but in all things, no matter what it is, you need to see the face of some child, or, no matter how far removed you get from it, classroom, principal, office, school board, we need to be sure we name children, we see children, we visit classrooms, and always, always, always remember what it's like to be there, because that's why we're here. And I think sometimes we get in this bureaucratic, world, and we're dealing with budgets and policy making, and we forget who's at the end of that. And we wouldn't be here without them. So to me, that's what, I don't know that I would call it champion. I just think always being student-centered is who we are, and really admire folks and really try hard to practice that.
It was invaluable go ahead, Amy.
So I was going to say, you stepped into two hard roles at DPI. What has been your most enjoyable part of being at DPI, and the work that you've done there over the last year and a half?
Well, it's a 2-part. You asked me most, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. One is, when I was in the field, I was not always that nice to DPI. So I just want to, at retirement, full disclosure, tell you, there are literally people at DPI I had to go apologize to because I maybe wasn't so nice as a superintendent about certain accountability issues, or, so anyway, the people there who are in the various divisions are really remarkably servant oriented. And so it was a great joy to work side by side with so many experts. And you all know, the further away from kids you get, the harder it is to really stay motivated by that. So this passion and energy people have is quite extraordinary. The second joy has been traveling this wonderful, amazing state. You work in a district, about your district, especially as superintendent, you visit schools, but to get out all over the state of North Carolina, during pandemic, today, and get, see classrooms. No matter how we label schools or districts, there are these amazing things going on everywhere in North Carolina. And that has been incredibly joyful and sort of the fuel that keeps you going day in and day out.
I just want to say that your leadership and Dr. Stegall during the pandemic was just invaluable to our state. To be able to have two leaders who understand what goes on in the field, to be able to provide that communication and that support. It's quite interesting to find out that you had that public relations job back in McDowell County all those years ago, and how it came around full circle. Dr. Emory, what would you say that you learned about yourself as an educator during this pandemic? Because it's like nothing that you've ever dealt with, even in your 41-year career.
That's a great question. What did I learn about myself during this pandemic? I think I think back to that sort of survivor's remorse, is that if you're on a team, every role counts. And so even if you're not in a classroom or at a school board meeting, you still have a way to support. And as long as you have a servant mentality, you can step up as a member of that team and do something that means something for folks. And sometimes it's not easy to see. So, how do we change our lens on things and figure out, okay, what is the need? What do people need in this moment? And, Marlow, you were involved, you mentioned communications. Some of that for me was as simple as, okay, Bev, if you're closing out the comms call every Tuesday, end with an tell a story, right? One of those calls, I told a story about a kid smashing a snake in a classroom, and a little girl got bit, and it was so unidentifiable. I literally scooped it into a Ziploc bag, and it went with us to the ER. And I said, no one ever prepares you for that as a principal. Well, we got through. One of the doctors from DHHS said, that's way harder than dealing with a pandemic. I could never scrape a snake up and put it in a Ziploc bag. But I say those stories so for me, it was people responded to something warm and caring and personal at the end of those calls. So I realized, okay, that's a need you can fill. So when they come back and ask you again, tell a story, tell something that makes them feel good about themselves and they know they're doing a great job, right? It was a small thing and it was from a distance, but I learned you can always find the need and figure out a way to try to support people through it.
Mhm.
Dr. Emory, I wanted to, oops, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, you're getting ready to leave after 41 years. And of course, the number one reason that we're all in education is, of course, for children. But what is the one thing aside from children that you think you're going to miss leaving your role?
I know that one really easy. I'm going to miss having a role in the development and nurturing of other leaders. Marlow mentioned notes and comments, and one of the most heartwarming things for me in the last week since this has become public are the number of people who've reached out and said, you encourage me, or those seeds you plant that you don't realize. And I really enjoy the empowerment, the leadership development, whether it's a teacher leadership academy in Forsyth, or it was, our tiered leader development in Pitt. That will be the thing I miss the most, and hope I can figure out some creative way to keep having a little bit of a hand in how we grow leaders and support them in the state.
Well, that leads me right into my question. I guess you touched on it just a little bit, but I wanted to ask you, is it really gonna be like all road trips and beaches and everything after retirement, or will you still dabble a little bit in education?
It's a fun problem to have. I don't know what I'm going to do, and I'm trying. I've never been a good person to just be still and be present. And so I have this long list of things I think I want to do, but I want to just let that happen and not try to pre-program it or be strategic. I have journals and journals full of notes about kids and stories and skunks and snakes and crack houses, and I'm full of stories. And so instead of some big research project or leadership theories, there's a part of me that really is leaning towards trying to capture them in some way that might be inspirational to other people, or be funny, or lighten the load a little bit. And I'm not the greatest writer, but that's sort of something I've thought about that I would like to do. I've also thought about being a bartender, you know, landscaping. I love to garden. So, who knows? Trying to just let it happen and not try to prescribe it too much.
Well, if you become a bartender, you definitely will have more stories to add to your book. Are you playing around with any titles for this book that may happen?
I'm not anywhere near that. I've been reading and listening to a lot of podcasts for how people got started with books, and what I hear the most is that you should just write every day, write what comes to your heart, and that that will evolve and get you someplace at some point if it's meant to be. So I'm going to take that good advice.
I am going to go off a little bit in here, and there go to the musical Hamilton. Okay, end of Hamilton. There's a song, "Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story." Okay, in there they talk about what her proudest moment is. What's going to be your proudest moment when you look back at your career?
Wow, proudest moment. That's hard. But I'm gonna take a stab at your really good question. Out of lots of different crises, loss of a student in Pitt County to second impact syndrome, heartbreaking, hard, but legislation in our state that requires certain concussion protocols. I would tell you environmental issues that shut down a school in Forsyth County, and out of that have come OSHA and safety standards that impact safety of children. So I guess I would say, I hope folks will see that Bev was someone that even when stuff was tough and it was challenging and hard, and maybe we had some culpability in it, that we applied a continuous improvement mindset to, what do we learn from this? How do we get better from it? How do we better protect or serve or support children and teachers as a result of some of those really tough things that happen?
What a great example. Any other questions? Dr. Emory is such a great example for us all. I was just listening. I'm just in awe of you, Dr. Emory, and just so grateful that we've had this time to chat with you and reflect on your career. Any other questions for Dr. Emory? Well, Dr. Emory, we wish you the absolute best. We're so grateful that we had this time to chat, and we hope to continue to stay in contact with you. You always have a come and guest co-host with us one time. That'll be fun.
Hey, yes.
Yeah, that will be really great. But we wish you the best. And Dr. Emory is not going anywhere yet. Her retirement is effective December the 31st. So we still have some few more weeks with Dr. Emory. We're so grateful. We also like to thank our audience so very much for watching. We hope that you will follow us on our social media platforms. Please follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @TarHeelTeachers. Please like Tar Heel Teachers on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit our website, tarheelteachers.com. And on all of our social media platforms, please use our hashtag #TarHeelTeachers so we can find all of your great comments. We would also like to thank our wonderful group of co-hosts for joining us for this conversation: Amy Tart, Joy Williams, Jason Edwards, and Arisha Smalls. And once again, we'd like to thank our special guest, Dr. Bev Emory, who will soon retire after 41 years of service in education. We look forward to seeing you next time on Tar Heel Teachers at Home.